Today we are going to be talking about technology in agriculture. There's a lot of new technologies that are on the horizon or that are being used now. And I'm going to give you a short lecture on the kinds of things that are being developed and the kinds of things that we are using in agriculture and in the food system. And then we'll have a discussion, or you guys will have a discussion on the Blackboard discussion about what that means for the future of agriculture, and also what it means for underdeveloped countries, is where a lot of these examples that I'm going to give you are in the developed world, right? So artificial intelligence and robotics in agriculture is becoming really well researched and really popular, and there's a lot of things going on. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about some examples. So we already talked a little bit about food connections last week, and the idea of the Impossible Burger and all of that. And so there's lots and lots of innovations going on right now, and a lot of them are touted to be our saviors. With the invention of farm-free foods, so talking about cultured meats. Cultured meats that you can see in this petri dish are grown in a laboratory, so they're not even mimicking meat like the Impossible Burger, for example. We're using plant-based products in place of meat. So those are something completely different to cultured meats. These are grown in the laboratory. At the moment, it's not a profitable venture because it's still very expensive to get a small amount of meat that's cultured in a laboratory setting. But I'm sure as time goes on, the techniques will get better, and cultured meats will be something that the developed world will have much more choice to have on their dinner plate, right? So there, like everything, there are pluses and minuses, and of course, cultured meats means that you're taking away the emotional side of things. You're taking away the cruelty to animals. This is not a living creature that they're trying to produce, but it is a slab of meat. It isn't a living, breathing animal in the way that we are imagining animals and how we're using them today. So the impacts on the environment can be really broad, but of course there's also other aspects to culturally raised meat. It takes a lot of energy. So at the moment, our electrical grid is very much dependent on fossil fuels. So unless we get our energy coming from a renewable resource, the burden on the environment can still be pretty steep. One of the main companies at the moment that are dealing with this is a Finnish company called Solar Foods, and they have revealed it has created protein from thin air. So they basically are combining hydrogen and they're splitting it from water with atmospheric carbon dioxide and nitrogen to enable soil bacteria to produce a protein flour they called Solein. So this is another alternative to cultured meats. This is providing a protein source that is from generated from bacteria, right? So it's again another source of protein that is an innovative way of creating protein. And of course, there's much argument about the fact that the population is developing and growing as fast as it is, and we will have to find alternative means of providing enough protein for everybody. And Solein is just one of those examples of companies that are finding new ways to create food from what they are marketing as from thin air. So it's a pretty interesting company. If you want to look them up, you can Google Solar Foods and have a look at what they're doing. They're not just doing protein powder, they're also involved in some other things, some other techie things as well. So if you wanted to check that out, feel free to. So something that is really kind of on the cusp and is being used a lot at the moment, at least it's an emerging product, is the idea of using robotics and artificial intelligence to create autonomous pickers. So here's a picture. Let me see if this is going to work for you guys. Let me move myself out of the way. I'll also give you these links so you can take a look for yourself. But this is an agro-robot. It's a European research and development company that has created a autonomous picker. And so as you can see in this video that I'm showing you here, the robots they're equipped with cameras, and they're able to see when the strawberry is ripe and when it's ready for picking, and it literally goes and picks the strawberries. Right now, autonomous pickers are able to, at least in this industry, in the strawberry farming industry, they're able to collect more strawberries per hour than humans are. So the technology is very, very quickly developing and outpacing human resources, right? So there's also a double-edged sword to that. If we're replacing farm workers with robots, that has implications for, of course, the economy. It has some social complications there as well, because there are seasonal workers that depend on those kinds of jobs. So there's many pluses and minuses to this, but we'll see that it will increase as time goes on and the technology improves. One of the major barriers right now for autonomous pickers is going to be having them be nimble enough to recognize different products. Because, for instance, this machine that's here, it's only able to pick strawberries. So, of course, on a farm, that, you know, by and large, more than one crop is being grown for market. So coming up with a way that an autonomous picker can switch between recognizing and picking strawberries and then shifting it to pick something else will make it much more profitable. At least in the United States, autonomous pickers are really quite becoming more popular. I shouldn't say they are popular, because there's still a lot of research that's going into it, and a lot of it are, you know, the research is mostly coming from universities. But in the citrus and apple industry, these kinds of technology are also picking up. So another interesting twist in terms of using robotics are robotic weeders. And let me see if I can play this for you. So the idea is that the weeders, oops, let me just turn this off. It's just music. What this particular machine is doing is it has solar panels, so it's able to use a renewable resource, and it moves through the field, and utilizing cameras and artificial intelligence, they're able to improve how these machines can recognize certain weeds within their fields, and through very precise so I'm not sure where it stopped, but I think I stopped myself recording. I'll go back and check. But these machines that are the robotic weeders, they're able to use a very precise method of squirting a pesticide or a herbicide onto the fields. So in this way, it really reduces the amount of herbicides that are being used. They use a fraction of the amount compared to conventional weeding methods, where, of course, we're talking about broad sweeping the field and spraying the entire crop. So there's huge possibilities for this kind of weeding machine. Not all of them are using chemicals to spray, so there's a lot of development going into organic options. So there'll be machines that can utilize artificial intelligence and can be programmed to identify different types of weeds, and they have a manual way of removing those weeds. And some of them are even equipped with lasers or flamethrowers, so that they don't have to use chemical fertilizers. So these kinds of technologies are really promising for agriculture in general, when we're thinking about the labor intensity that's required to reduce the weeds in your field, it's just not practical to have people walking through these, acres and acres of fields doing weeding. That just doesn't happen. But you could set something like this out into your field and just let it roam around your field and scanning to see where the weeds are and remove them. So this has some pretty promising ideas. So there's it's actually the University of Sydney in Australia, and they have, they're working on a robot that is talking about precision weeding. And so let me show you this guy as well. So it's using robotics to target weeds. And let me just skip forward a minute. So here you can see the robot is actually manually removing weeds. So it's equipped with a camera, and it's been programmed to know what the difference is between a weed and the target crop. And in some cases like this, they're trying out not just the manual weeding, but the application of spot herbicides. So again, it's going to really reduce the amount of herbicide that's being used. So they're showing you a couple of different techniques. And the same technology is being used for watering, for example. So it's pretty interesting. If you want to research that a little bit more, I'll put the link to all these videos as well into the description. Also, there's a lot of work going into the into robotic pest management. So the picture on the left-hand side, a lot of times what people do if they have a pest problem and they're trying to farm organically and not spray their crops with all kinds of horrible pesticides, is they will strap a vacuum, a giant vacuum to their back. This is a vacuum backpack, and they go out into the field and literally suck up as many of the, whatever the pest is, Japanese beetle or locust or whatever it is at the time. So manual methods like this, the vacuum backpacks or spraying or genetically modifying the crops to be pest resistant. The idea is that we can have some robotics that are going to be equipped to basically take out pests, and it's using the very similar technology to the one we just saw with the manual weed removal. So the robot can scan the field, and through artificial intelligence it can start to learn what a pest is and what a beneficial insect is using imagery, and it'll be able to identify which of those insects are actually the pests, and we'll be able to target spray just a little bit of pesticide onto those, or use a laser and remove the threat of those pests. So that's definitely something that's being researched and developed across developed countries. So it's something that is emerging for sure, and it's really important that we try to find alternative methods to control pests. The United Nations estimates that about 20 to 40% of crop damage is from pests. So it's a severe problem. And in light of climate change, we're going to be seeing more pests become an issue, and weather conditions will be an issue as well. So coupled with all of that, we're going to have to find innovative ways to manage our pest problem. And if we want to do it sustainably, and we want to do it at minimal cost to the environment, some of these AI robotic developments are really promising. So there's also all other why isn't the image showing up? That's weird. Oh, there we go. Okay, so microsensors are being used pretty widely actually now. They're becoming really much more popular. This is a microsensor that's been on a tomato plant, and the sensor is able to remotely, it will monitor the growth of the target plant. So this is a tomato plant. So it's monitoring the growth of the fruit. It's able to then let the farmer know when peak harvest should occur. And, you put several of these sensors out, and sometimes these are in fruit orchards as well. Apple orchards have used these as well, and plums, anything that is really quick to go bad. So a fruit, for example, like a peach, once it's ready to harvest, you have to harvest it pretty quickly, otherwise it rots on the vine. So having things like this and reducing the amount of waste and increasing the profits to the farmer, so they can be really very helpful for determining when harvest should occur. Drones are also becoming very popular for developing in the agricultural industry, and there's a few different ways in which drones are used. So it's probably the largest sector of the of robotics and artificial intelligence that's being utilized right now. So for instance, drones are used for soil and field analysis. So you can deploy a drone over your field and collect just enormous amounts of data and generate three-dimensional maps for your field. And that will then help you determine, areas that are low in nutrients, areas that are sodden or dry. So you're able to have some kind of patterns emerge from the data that you're collecting from the drones. And even some drones are then deployed after the planting, so that they can determine what needs to be done moving forward, whether or not it's time to do some nutrient amendments to your soil or things like that. So these have been really helpful. Startups have already created drone planting systems that can that achieve an uptake rate of 75% and decrease planting costs by 85%. So there are some companies that are involved in using drones for planting. So what they do, the system then, they deploy the drones into the field, and they shoot pods with seeds and plant nutrients into the soil at the same time. So the drone will fly over, they shoot the seed down and squirt it with a little bit of nutrient and move on, and precisely 3 inches over, it does the same thing again and just weaves back and forth over the field and to seed a field very precisely. So that is really an interesting technology that's developing in agriculture for sure. Crop sprayers have been used very widely for the drone technology. This was probably one of the first ones that were developed. And these crop sprayers, they utilize ultrasonic echoing and lasers, very much like LiDAR. If you are familiar with looking at topography maps or something like that, where you can see the relief in the ground, and they're usually false color, so you can see the top is red, the bottom is blue, that kind of thing. So they use that kind of a technology to measure where they scan the field and they scan the ground and they spray the correct amount of liquid, modulating that for distance from the ground, and then spraying in real time for even coverage of your field. And the spraying can be anything, really. This could be used for irrigation. It could be used for herbicides and pesticides, things like that. It could be used for liquid nutrients. So crop spraying with drones has been, pretty well experimented with. So yeah, and drones have also been used for irrigation. There are sensors that can identify parts of the field that are dry, that maybe need improvements. So as the drone is doing its flight over the field, it's detecting areas that need more irrigation and areas that don't need it. So a lot less water is wasted, because traditional methods of irrigation are surface irrigation, and it's a sweep across the field. So everything gets the same amount of water regardless. And, a field can be very different on one end compared to the other. So having the technology to determine where you need more water compared to where you don't need it right now improves water use. So soil sampling as well is a technology that's being developed. The University of Sydney again is really doing an interesting job with this one. There's a couple different designs right now. The Bonnie Rob, which is in the top picture, this one will take soil samples, so it will inject its collector into the ground, brings it back into the machine, it liquidizes it right there and carries out the analysis in the field and gives you a reading that is Wi-Fi capable, so you can receive it on your phone. So it will give you real-time information about your soil. So the soil test can be nutrient analysis, letting the farmer know if there's spots that need more nutrients. And the one on the bottom here is called SmartCore, and it's designed to collect accurate, repeatable soil samples in the field, but this one brings it back to the farmer and the grower, so it still has to go out to a lab to do the soil testing, but each sample is barcoded with it and has GPS coordinates of where the sample was taken from and stuff. So once the soil sample have been analyzed, then the farmer gets a report giving them more information. So the one on the bottom is sort of lower tech. It's not like instant real time compared to the one on the top. Harper Adams University in the UK has developed a fully automated method of planting a complete farm field. So they planted an entire hectare of barley, which was fully automated from the very beginning to the end. So right from planting the seed to, or no, even before that, prepping the field to planting the field with barley and then harvesting the field. It was all completely done without any human beings involved in the operation. So there's a couple of links here. Go and check that out. It shows you in sort of a quick time-lapse kind of a deal how they achieved that. So it can be done right now. So that even, it's self-driving tractors and using artificial intelligence to and robotics to achieve this form of agriculture. So completely removing the human element to it, which is, really interesting. So yeah, I'll be curious to see what you guys think of this kind of technology. Another technology that is starting to become, I wouldn't say popular, but is emerging, is the idea of vertical farming. And a lot of times the vertical farming, as you can see in the picture, it's done indoors, and they basically have crops growing on a vertical level. So rather than the traditional method of having your plants growing in one layer out in a field, they're adopting a more space intensive method of growing and using vertical space instead of horizontal space. Currently, it isn't really very profitable unless you're growing things like lettuce and basil for the market. So, I doubt this technology would really take off for things like potatoes and wheat, things that are really popular and bought intensely around the world. But for things like niche markets, perhaps growing for restaurants, specialty items that are not necessarily popular with the general consumer, but are really, fetch a high price at restaurants or in a local market. I can see this being utilized pretty well, especially since you can eliminate a lot of the pest issues, so you don't need to use chemical control pests. So it does have a lot of potential, but I can't see it being, the technique that feeds the world, right? Animal health is also something that, farmers struggle with, and right now there's a lot of development in in robotics right now and technology to try to increase the animal health. So as you know, demand for meat is increasing, as more people are becoming affluent, more people are eating meat, yada yada. We've had that conversation before. And so making sure that your losses in your animals is at a minimum, you need to keep them healthy, right? So there's all kinds of sensors that are being developed to track the health of the different animals. So here's one example. Herd Dog is the company that developed smart ear tags. And there's a picture here. You can see this cow right here. Where's my cursor? There. The little blue thing, I think it's the little blue thing. It might be that guy over there. That is the smart tag on the ear. And so it collects all kinds of biometric data from the animal, the temperature, respiration rate. Some of them are equipped with GPS, so you can see how much they're moving about, how much they're sitting down, all of that. And so there's another kind of thing in cows, it's smart collars that do the same thing. So it's either an ear tag or a smart collar. Some of them are designed to analyze the cow breath. So if some of the livestock are getting sick, they exhale certain chemicals like ketones and sulfides, which can give some indication of the health of the animal and tell you whether or not, you know, there's something wrong with their diet or it's starting to get an infection or something like that. So those sensors that are analyzing cow breath are really helping to reduce the amount of animals that are dying, or it allows the farmer to act sooner in terms of treating the animal with perhaps antibiotics or something like that. Some of those smart sensors are able to test the animal for bovine TB, which is a respiratory disease. So it uses masks over the animal to basically collect the breath and then determine whether or not inside the animal's exhalant they're exhaling viruses, or in this case bacteria, tuberculosis bacteria, and so they're able to determine if the herd are healthy or not. Respiratory loss, by the way, is something, respiratory disease is something that is one of the most pressing issues for livestock farmers. So, you know, getting a handle on that early can be really important for the health of the herd. There's also all kinds of sensors that can reveal real-time alerts if an animal feels stress because it's going through labor. So when your cow is having a calf, you need to know when it's happening. You need to be there if there's any labor difficulties to help the birthing process go smoothly. So all of these kinds of technologies are really increasing the health of the herd and the safety of the herd. And so the bottom line, of course, is it's improving costs. So it's streamlining the operations and it's minimizing the costs to the farmer, making it more economical. So this is an image of a farmer using an app on his phone with an infrared camera, or maybe it isn't an app on his phone. It looks like a camera, an infrared camera. But what this will do is it detects inflamed udders, which is usually an infection of the udders called mastitis. It's a bacterial infection within the milk glands, and that can be really devastating to your dairy herd. If your dairy herd, if the girls are all getting mastitis, then that can lead to death within the herd pretty quickly. So you need to treat it with antibiotics if that's the case. So having the infrared camera, it allows you to see if there are any inflamed areas, which would be an indication of infection. So this early detection reduces the need for antibiotics usually, because you can get on it faster and the course of antibiotics will be lower if the infection isn't quite as rooted in, right? There's also audio monitoring for pig health. So this little green sensor is actually an audio, a recorded sensor that will analyze how your pigs are sounding. Respiratory disease, again, is one of the main killers of pigs when they're held in confinement. So this allows the farmer to get real-time access to data to assess the health of the pigs. And so what it will do as well is, if you hear one pig coughing, then you're able to treat that pig and isolate that pig so it doesn't spread to every other pig within the herd, right? So a lot of these technologies for animal health are really designed to very quickly get a handle on a health issue so that it doesn't blow it out of proportion and kill off entire herds, which it has done. There have been many, especially in CAFO situations when animals are held in such tight quarters and in confignment. A single pig can get respiratory disease, and then a week later they're all dead. So it's very serious, and the farmers are able to keep on top of the health of their pigs using these technologies. There's also 3D cameras that are installed in the paddocks of different herds, and this then basically has a camera that's deployed where, maybe over a grate where the animals are moving into another field, and it takes measurements of the girth of the beef cattle, and it determines when it's best to sell those animals for slaughter. So pretty much, similar idea to the produce sensors. These ones are really trying to help the farmer in determining when it's time to sell so that you can get the most profit. Because if they get too large, then it can be a problem. And if you didn't wait long enough, then you're not going to get as many pounds or as many dollars for a pound of meat, right? Okay, so in light of all of this, and I know I sort of sped through that really quickly, I want you guys to take a little bit of time going through some of the links that I'll post in the description on the YouTube video for this. But given all of that, all of this technology seems like a silver lining for the agricultural industry, right? I mean, all of these technologies can help improve our efficiency, our economics of all of the animals. But these are very much first world kinds of solutions, right? It's a developed country's way of tackling an issue. So I want you to think about what kind of an impact you think this could have on a global scale. Think about the fact that our food system is now a global food system, and think about all the countries in underdeveloped nations and their agricultural systems. Do you think farmers in India, for example, will be able to adopt this kind of technology? So have a think about what you think it would mean for the global food system. And so, give it some thought for yourself. Maybe do a little bit of reading. I don't want you to feel like you have to take, hours researching this question. It's more of a, what do you guys think? But certainly if you're confuzzled, then look it up and try to determine what you think this would really mean. The yields in our countries, how would those be impacted? The economics of it. Would it make us more competitive on a global market compared to the underdeveloped countries? So give it some thought and post a comment. I'll just require one post, but hopefully you guys will read other people's comments as well. So hop over onto the discussion board and go ahead and do that. All right. That's me signing off. Goodbye.